Hi, I'm Davey from MKDVB. I've made a resolution to create more music. Part of being able to do that is streamlining my process and streamlining my rig and my equipment. I also want to be able to perform some of my jams, my tracks, and carrying 6-7 synths plus a circle on around is going to be a bit much. So one of my main goals was creating a streamlined performance rig. Now I know the title of this video is How Many Electrons Are Too Many? And some of you out there I know are going to say that 0 is the perfect number of electron machines, and I get it. They're a little bit obtuse, they're a little bit unwieldy, and a little bit nerdy, right, in terms of how you operate them. You know, until I really came to grips with the mono machine, I was in the same boat. You know, and it took me a couple tries to crack that little box. Once I did, the gates opened and it helped me create music that I wouldn't have been able to create on any of the other machines, right? And I think that's their superpower, is that they help you make music that you probably wouldn't normally make otherwise. With all that said, I have always thought that the right number of electrons for me in my rig was 1. 1 electron was more than enough. Anything more than that got too complicated too fast. So if you had told me that I'd wind up with not just 1, not just 2, but 3 electron boxes, plus possibly more sequencers on top of that, how did I get here? I started off with the mono machine, and I love that box to death, but I traded it in for an Analog Four plus pocketing $2,200. I've made just as much music, if not more, on the Analog Four than I did on the mono machine, because for all its glorious kind of quirks, it was a little bit hard to wrap my head around. And the moment that I lost all my presets because of an ill executed save maneuver, I was done. It doesn't have as much character, I would say, as the mono machine, which is strange when typically what you think about is the Analog Four being analog would have more character than the digital mono machine. But the Analog Four, I just make a lot of music with it. So I knew that at the heart of any performance rig was going to be the Analog Four. My original plan was to have the Sequential Pro 3 as the controller / lead synth. That's my go-to primary mono lead synth. But I realized that I was running out of tracks too quickly. There are some who have said that the Analog 4 is actually Elektron's best drum machine. And, you know, I kind of get why they say that. It's an analog machine and you can make drums on it. But, you know, if you do decide to go that route, you use at least 2 to 3 tracks on your drums, and you only have a handful of tracks for the rest of your jam. And so I was finding that I was eating a lot of tracks, and to be honest with you, I don't think it's their best drum machine. I actually prefer the mono machine as a drum machine. And when we get to talk about the Analog Rytm, that's probably one of the best drum machines on the market. So I appreciate the sentiment, but the Analog 4 as the drum machine for me was just a stand-in. So I was finding that I didn't have enough tracks. The Pro 3 plus 4 Analog 4 tracks is 5 tracks. My music, I wanted to simplify my music, go in a more minimal direction. I tend to have too much going on in my music and not leave enough space. And so I definitely was enticed by the idea of limiting myself to just 5 tracks. But the Analog 4, if you use it for drums, you wind up using 2 to 3 of those tracks, and now you don't have enough to kind of reach that critical mass and have a full sounding track, even if it's just a minimal one. So I've played with most of the Elektron boxes, but once they changed ownership and Zenk left, I kind of stopped paying attention. Even so, I was always curious about FM synthesis, and especially the Digitone. The first time I saw a picture of the Digitone Keys, I thought it was a prank or a joke, but here we are, right? I got it for a great deal, and it turns out that paired with the Elektron Analog 4, for it to become the foundation for my performance rig, the Digitone Keys has 4 additional tracks, and most importantly, it has awesome drum sounds. So now the Analog 4 doesn't have to do all of the drum duties. I've got 4 extra tracks, and so I don't feel like I have to scrimp and scrounge on drum tracks. like, oh, I'm not going to have a hi-hat now, so that way I can have a bass line. So having that allows me to really hone in on my drums, which I also want to improve. And in addition to that, it makes an awesome MIDI controller, right? So one of the big weaknesses of the analog series, both the Four and the Rytm, is that they have very, very basic MIDI sequencing capabilities, right? So, with the Analog Four, you can't really send MIDI CC out in any real way. So I can't use it, for instance, to control my pedals. Enter the Digitone Keys. It's got a great MIDI setup. I would say it's better than the Octatracks, which I always thought was a little bit confusing. And not least, it sounds really good. I've got a lot of analog synths in the studio here. The Digitone Keys just has a different flavor of sound. It's another tool that I can use in my sound palette. I was going to be perfectly happy to spend the rest of the year learning on these synthesizers, really diving deep into them. And then my nasty gear habit struck again. If someone offers me an Elektron Analog Rytm Mark II for $600, my alarm bells go ringing. But because this was a local deal and we were meeting at a pawn shop, I figured I'd take the chance. I went down there, and lo and behold, a Rytm in perfect condition turns out to have bent knobs and a busted screen that is like kind of burnt in and you can't see half the things on it. That's how you get an Analog Rytm Mark II for less than $400. I've had the Analog Mark I before, and I've made some drum beats on it that sounded amazing to me, and I would never have been able to do on a different machine. So at that price, I figured it can't hurt to take it for a test spin. Not only is the Rytm the Elektron box I didn't know that I needed, it turns out that it's the sampler that I've been looking for. I've had the Octatrack multiple times. I've had the Deluge multiple times. In fact, I'm packing it up tonight to mail it out in a trade for Moog Minotaur. Both those things are far better samplers than the Rytm. Don't get me wrong on that. But they're harder for me to use. I'm not a huge samples person, and so they don't form the heart of my workflow. And so I don't dig into those menus that often. And especially the Octatrack, but even the Deluge, every time I wanted the sample, I had to remember how to do it. So I was just never do it. One of the major differences between the Mark II and the Mark I for the Rytm is that you can sample directly into the Rytm Mark II. And it's easy. It's so easy to even get good timing because unlike the Deluge, you can tell the Rytm that you only want to record for 32 steps. And it has an audio threshold detection, so it won't start recording until it detects you playing audio. So it's pretty easy to get, fairly decent loops going on the Analog Rytm. I can have a whole station by itself with just the Analog Rytm and my Moog Matriarch. Do you think I'm changing my station, my performance rig, from the dual Elektron here to the Matriarch plus the Analog Rytm? I'll give you a hint. No, of course not, right? All I'm going to do is just have two performance rigs, two stations. But the thing that I like about the Analog Rytm is that it's portable as well. And so I can actually hook it up and make a three-headed Elektron monster with this station right here. I even built a custom desk to hold it. It's got the slide-out tray just to hold the Elektron Analog Rytm. At first, I had it kind of stationed side by side with the Analog Four, but I realized I didn't like the finger drum reaching over that far. I developed a pretty good workflow with just the Digitone Keys and Analog Four, but it turns out that once you turn two electrons into three, you know that old saying, two's company, three's a crowd? That definitely seems to apply to at least my electrons, right? So one of the things that the Analog Rytm allows me to do is I probably will not have very many drums happening on the Digitone Keys or the Analog Four if the Rytm is involved, right? The Rytm sounds amazing. It blows me away just how good the Analog Rytm sounds. And so I can't really see why I would use the Digitone or the Analog Four when I have 12 tracks of percussion on the Analog Rytm. But that means that I now have all my percussion taken care of, plus 8 tracks. And now I'm back into options paralysis, right? I have too many tracks, too many options, way more ways to stuff my tracks full of things and sounds and songs. And now I need to figure out how to control all these mutes and all these tracks and all these different machines. I'm definitely on the verge of going from streamlined to back into not streamlined. I might already be over that line if I'm honest with you. What I want to do is I want to take some time to really dive deep into these boxes. I know I've talked a lot about gear in this video. If you're watching my channel or you're watching this video, then you're probably like me, right? Beyond just making music, kind of setting up your rig, thinking about it, kind of trying to design your system. That's part of the fun for people like us. At the end of the day, the gear and even the music itself is just a means to an end, right? It's not about the gear. It's not about the music even. It's really about my creativity. It's about my life. Creating music is almost like a spiritual practice. You know, that's one of the things that I've been trying to figure out this direction with my channel, right? I don't want to focus so much on product, right? I don't want to focus so much on albums or jams or tracks or, music as commodity, music as a thing, right? Music is something that we do that gives us kind of a life worth living. And so I think for this process, what I am going to be doing jams. Don't get me wrong, right? I'm definitely going to be recording jams and putting them out there, but I'm going to be doing it as a process, right? So normally in the past, maybe I do a video like this, talk about my gear, and then do some jam videos. But now we're going to switch up the process. What we're going to do is I'm going to record the process of me working up these jams, of arranging these jams, of doing the sound design, and then doing the jam at the end. I've been working on a track with the Digitone Keys and the Analog Four. Eventually, I'll be adding the Analog Rytm into this three-piece. And I think the grand master plan in the back of my head is 3 electron sequencers and then 1 circlon to rule them all. That's gonna be a big fucking journey. So if you're down, subscribe to my channel, ring that notification bell, and until next time, remember, the music we create is more powerful than the music we consume. So keep jamming.